I see you better.
Yeah, I just think it's on Halloween settings.
There you go.
I think you're right. I'm trying out for Wicked. Since I can't sing at all.
We're good to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 7 p.m. Thank you all for being here. It is, let's see, Tuesday, October 12th. I now call to order the 2083rd regular meeting of the City of College Place. And will the clerk please take roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Bobbitt,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Selby,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle.
Present.
Councilmember Nyhagen has requested to be excused, and Councilmember Peterson may join us later. We do have a quorum. We also have Mayor Hernandez, City Attorney Ree Colwell, City Administrator Mike Rizzatello, Finance Director Brian Carlton, Fire Chief David Winter, Community Development Director John Rickard, and myself, City Clerk Lisa Neisel.
Right, great. So will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. It's now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment, or would anyone in attendance like to speak?
I would like to speak, Madam Mayor. It's Council Member Jerry.
All right, please do.
Okay, my name is Jerry Bobbitt. I reside at 830 Southeast Birch Avenue. And I received some phone calls this week from concerned citizens of our fine city. And I didn't realize that we had low water pressure out by, was it Independence Avenue on the other side of the highway towards the end of the line. And I didn't realize that that was a concern for some of our citizens. And I'm just wondering, this individual's lived in this community over 30 years, and I guess it's been an ongoing problem. Any I don't know, information in regards to that low water pressure, I'd appreciate. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, Lisa?
We do have a couple of attendees. If either one of you would like to speak, you could raise your hand. Apparently not.
All right. All right, thank you. So then we're going to move on to our consent agenda, which consists of approving the agenda for today, October 12th, 2021. Approve the council minutes from the September 28th, 2021 meeting. Approve council minutes from October 5th, 2021 workshop, and excuse the absence of Council Member Nyhagen. And currently Council Member Peterson is not here, but may come in a little bit later, but just in case, I'd like to include him into that as well. Are there any items the council would like to have removed from the consent agenda at this time?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I
Thank you.
second.
Perfect. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, the motion is passed. We do not have any presentations tonight, so we're going to move on to public hearings. We have a public hearing scheduled tonight on the Sharp annexation at 995 Northeast C Street. And Mr. Rickard will present on that.
Good evening. The applicant is Donald and Trudy Sharp. They reside at 995 Northeast C Street. The property is 0.77 acres. It is a county island. You can see it there in red. Thank you, Lisa, for pulling that up. It's near where the new Goodwill is going. It's just to the west of the Goodwill site. We have part of the conditions of approval is dedication of a 5-foot strip of right-of-way along the frontage of the property. The property owners have agreed to that dedication. It is within our sewer service area and within Green Tank's water service area. The purpose of the annexation is so that they can connect to city sewer. We did the appropriate notifications in the Union Bulletin and posted the site and mailed to surrounding property owners within roughly 300 feet. That's all really I have to add. It's very uneventful, this is not very exciting annexation. So it will leave another lot just to the west of it will still remain in the county. But we're chipping away at these little county islands, primarily through request by the property owners. Any questions?
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Clerk, did anyone submit a comment or arrange to speak on this topic?
No one made arrangements in advance. I do have 2 attendees. Would either of you like to provide testimony on this subject? Apparently not.
Doesn't appear so. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Right, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second, this is Councilmember Selby.
Any other discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it, the hearing is now closed. Next is our action items, which the first action item is a Sharp annexation at 995 Northeast C Street, and Mr. Rickard will continue presenting on that.
We have a motion to prepared for you to approve the ordinance. I don't really have anything additional to add.
Okay, so there's no additional discussion at this time. Is there a motion on this ordinance?
I'll motion to approve ordinance number 21-015, annexing certain property located at 995 North C Street into the municipal boundaries of the city of College Place, Washington.
Councilmember Boyle, a second.
Great, any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Welcome to the city of College Place.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rickard. All right, the next item is the acceptance of the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation Certified Local Government Grant Acceptance, and Mr. Rickard is continuing with that.
So earlier this year, you authorized the city to apply for a grant through DAP, the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. The proposal was to do a walking tour through the city, self-guided kind of walking tour of our historic properties. When we did our initial survey of historic properties, we ended up with this, they call it a, what do they call it? Basically it's a digital version of the research that's done on these. They call them like story maps. So the idea was that we would have signage in front of these historic properties throughout the city. That's an example of a sign that's been used in other communities. And there would be a QR code on it, which would pull up the detailed information about the site, and then it would guide you on to the next stop on the tour. The DAP was very interested in the project, and they would like to fund additional research on some more properties. For instance, some additional properties that we've identified would be the county poor farm property, the cemetery, and then there's some other properties around the community that we would do some additional research on. So the grant is for roughly $5,000 to do additional research. We're not obligated to actually implement the signage portion of it. That's why you see a difference there. The total project with our in-kind work was $28,515. So that includes labor from Public Works for installing the signs and staff time in preparation and acquiring the signage and working through the Historic Preservation Commission. The actual hard cost were roughly $19,500. So that $5,000 of that would cover the additional research that needs to be done, the development of the story maps, and then the rest of it is hard cost for the actual signs and the poles and stuff they'd be mounted on. So what I'm asking for is to accept the $5,000 grant. We can continue to move forward with the project, do the additional research, and then at a later date, either through the budget process, we'll approve the signage portion of it, or we can also look at seeking other grants that might fund the actual hard cost side of this project. So I hope I have thoroughly confused you.
Thank you, John. Let's go through council members for questions or comments or just scratching our heads. Let's start with Mr. Bobbitt.
No questions. Thank you, John.
Mr. Cleveland?
If I was understanding you correctly, we got 5,000 out of this approximately 20,000 that we applied for, and that will go towards research, and the remainder funds we're going to be seeking other grants for potentially.
Yes, potentially we'll look towards other grant opportunities, or we'll have to fund it through the budget process.
Okay, no other questions. Thanks.
Ms. Selby?
I don't have any questions. I just have two comments. One, I'm excited to see this because I'm always wondering about old stuff and I never know how to find out. And two, when my daughter got a history degree from Walla Walla, she had to do a senior project. And that might be an option for helping with some of the research. I don't know.
All right, Ms. Sherman?
I don't have any questions. I think it sounds great. Thank you, John.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
All right. Any additional discussion or comments? All right. Is there a motion on this action item?
I'll move to authorize the city administrator to execute the grant agreement between the Washington State Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation and the City of College Place in the amount of $5,000.
I'll second.
Great. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, administrative reports. We have several administrative reports, starting with the draft of the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 capital facilities plan by Mr. Rizzatello.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna go through this whole thing again. I am just gonna briefly touch on stuff that'll transpire next year, though. Just reiterating to please look at this, because the general concept is that we like to get this adopted by the end of November. That way, when we go for budgetary approval in early and mid-December, this is already out there. And this applies for all three plans, since a large percentage of the budget outside of the money gets allocated for staff and goes either the capital, the IT, or the equipment replacement. So I'll just read off some stuff off the spreadsheet, so that way you aren't having to go through all the pages. But from the administration community development standpoint, the key thing next year is starting work and finishing up the work to get the appropriate AV system in and get the council chambers to a point where we could do the hybrid meetings, and just so it's situated for better flow for meetings. So that money's coming out of the ARPA. It amounts to the 300,000 and then carrying over 80,000, because while we're doing all stuff in council chambers, we also want to get the architectural plans done for the old Sally Port and the old jail cells that exist, because we don't want to have to all that work out in council chambers and then end up having to tear out stuff and go back again. So we want to get one plan and get it done right. So the planning will get done next year, as well as hopefully getting all the AV stuff in the council chambers, so that we can move aggressively and get that done in the early part of the year. Fire department, key thing there is carry forward on the regional fire training tower. That actually is finally moving forward from what I've seen on the docket over at City of Walla Walla. So that is a reality that's happening. The staircase, that's a carryover from this year, and that amounts to the fact that contractors are booked solid this year, and we were not able to get this thing done this year. So that's a carry forward from this year. Then also renovation of the dorm room and the furniture, because again, a lot of our staff at the fire department were depending upon volunteers and students. Without them, we wouldn't have enough folks to answer all these calls. So we need to make sure that it's a nice place, to live, because it is their home. And then replacing one of the water pumps at 10,000. So that's in fire. Police department finishing up the gun range building, and then one of the chillers. We replaced the other one 2 years ago. Now the remaining one is failing.
I just wanted to make note that Councilmember Peterson has joined us.
Thanks. And Lisa, if you could scroll to page 2.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Going in the parks category, our main park project next year, because we're clearing the deck so we make sure it's done correctly and right, is the Lions Park project, which will deal with the splash pad, the playground, multi-use field, walking path, all of that. A lot of grants, and our RE2 money is going into this that we've been holding for last 4 years, so we could do this project right. So it amounts to 3.2 million. So that's in parks. Stormwater, there have been some changes from the last time I went over that. So Southeast Birch, That is going to take a while to do engineering on, because same time we're doing the engineering, we also have a plan to fix like the overflow pipe from the water tower, which will involve tearing up birch anyway. So instead of being able to do everything next year on this, it'll be just the engineering portion. So engineering Southeast Birch from 4th to 6th, and then construction would go into 2023, because it'll basically be tied at the hip with the water tower renovation work we'll be doing from FEMA money. And then the camp facility, Ecology's been on us about this. So we put in for some ecology grant funds for next year. Hopefully we'll get it, but we need to move forward on that. And then the construction to go in 2023. Going to page 3, going now into the streets bucket. One of them's getting the flashy stop signs at Whitman and Larch, so that's turned into a 4-way stop. Chip seal, we do this every year. That's funded just out of the general REIT money, not REIT 2, but the regular REIT. So 2022 is the neighborhoods on the south side of SR 125, some Harvest Meadows, Knapp Addition, Bliss Lane, the block resurfacing program that's also funded by REIT 1. Concept there is to fix one of the A block of road, and since I've been here, the request to get A block done has historically transpired every year, so that's why this program's done. For 2022, it'll be Southeast 6th, mainly because that's going to tie in with a water main replacement along that corridor that needs to occur. 2022 will also be 4 bikes. That's line share. That's paid for with a TIB grant that we've been sitting on just until the engineering will get done. And then it was also complications from bidding environment. We think we'll be able to get competitive bids going into the winter. And then also, since we pulled out those delineators, we now no longer have to rebuild completely one side of the road. So we were able to get the costs more in line with what we were projecting. Sidewalks, we got more CDBG money to go build out 6th and 8th with some sidewalks on the west side of the college. So that's what that is. Majania Road, that's a MPO grant, helping to pay for the engineering on that. And we would position ourselves to utilize the highway bill and do some utility work the following year. The broadband project, we're putting in for several grant sources on that, so I would hope one of them will become a reality. Whichever one does become a reality, the general concept is that, again, engineering next year, that's going to be a very intensive project, and then build out going into 2023. So that's the streets bucket of money. Now, if you go to the bottom of page 5, going into wastewater. So with wastewater, the heavy project is the treatment plant. The totality of that's 25 million. A lot of the engineering wrap up, the bidding, positioning this thing for construction will be next year, and getting all financing tied together so we could go full bore on this in 2023. Likewise, the other thing is replacing lift station 5 on Southwest 1st. That's the coffee can contraption looking lift station. So building an appropriate lift station. So we end up getting Public Works Trust Fund money for that. So that will start next year, the engineering and then the outright replacement. Going to page 6 is sewer lining. Instead of doing it every year, we're doing it every other year now, because the contractors, if you don't have a large enough contract, there's so few contractors that do this work, they actually are not interested in mobilizing and coming out unless you have contracts in the 300,000 to 400,000 arena. Otherwise, the prices are heavily skewed. So we'll just amass money, so it's like a every other year project. And then page 6, the water, there's still quite a bit of work to be done there. Well number 6, finishing that up. So we have a well house operating, and so we're back to where we were 5 years ago before the dual well failures. We'll get that lined out and done by next spring. Skyline 12th, that was delayed due to the crazy COVID bidding environment. We're backfilling that with ARPA money, which you all allocated. And then we have some backup funds from Public Works Trust Fund just in case, but we'll bid this out at the first of the year. The Whitman Solar Array, this is still a thing. We're pursuing TransAlta grants. We turned in a Commerce one. There's a lot of others we're doing to try and make this a reality and put it right inside the fence line of the east side tanks on Maple. 6th Street, that dovetails to what I said earlier about the block repaving. So replacing a water main that is rotting out over on 6th between College and Date. Well 7 will finally get us to where we'll have an additional well over what we've had for years and years, even though we've had population growth. So we have the trust fund money and begin engineering. The concept will be that they'll be on the grounds of where the Southwest Sewer Lift Station will be down at Teal. And then Western College Place water, it's to get the engineering going on the tank, because I mean, as we all saw when we had the water snafu this summer, we don't have a ton of water storage yet. We have growing population, so we need to step that up. So that's what that is, and we have trust fund money to do the engineering on that. So page 7 has the summaries. Summary for next year amounts to 14.9 mil. And then the 6-year outlay is 86. You'll notice that nosedived about 5 million from the past time I presented that. That's because we got more concrete numbers on that Lions Park Community Center building, which we're submitting the EDA funds for. While we originally had that estimated at 8, we actually had an architect come back and give us a ballpark for what something like that would be, and it ended up being 3. So it ended up being quite a bit of cost savings compared to what we thought it would be. But again, that project will be only if we get the EDA grant. But that is the capital facility plan in front of you. Any questions?
Let's start with questions with Mr. Bobbitt.
Thanks, Mike. That's a lot of information in a short time, but no questions. It looks pretty clear on the spreadsheet.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions, but great work as always, Mike. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson,
Questions? Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Selby,
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Let's see, next is the draft fiscal year 2022 to 2027 equipment replacement plan.
Thank you. Again, this functions under similar methodology. This is for 6 years out. The last 5 years are more of a guesstimate, but we try to figure out where revenues and expenses are going to go, so we can map stuff out accordingly. But the first year is definitely concrete. So I'll just go over the key things we have slated for next year. So next year we have the generator work out at City Hall, and this makes sense. This was a project for this year. We punted it into next year. Main reason being is that with all the architecture work that's going to be going on and engineering work for the Sally Port, the jail cells, everything else, it's going to go roughly in the same area. So it makes sense to do it at the same time to achieve cost savings, because you have to spec that stuff out special. Next year is a very heavy year in the fire department. We're using the ARPA money to get ahead of things with the fire engine, because otherwise, to be candid, your only solution for stuff like that would have to be some semblance of a bond issue. So we'll be able to avoid that. And then other equipment is just the vehicle replacement that we've gone over past meetings for the fire marshal and the fire captain. And then also replacing the brush truck that enables us to get the wildland money, which builds up equipment funds for the fire department. It also keeps our firefighters wanting to volunteer, since they do like going out on those kind of calls. And then the ambulance replacement, because again, as a refresher, those ambulances we bought were not new. They were used, and we're using them a lot, which means that they're wearing out. Police department continuing the leasing program, same with the tasers. So moving ahead on that. And then parks, again, the pickup for the park, replacing that. Stormwater, we filed today actually an ecology grant request for this, but getting a Vector truck, because right now we're using the old one that we got from Wastewater when we ended up privatizing the equipment down there, but it's like really old and does not work appropriately. Streets department, we have the Stellar truck that's out of the ARPA money. Flusher, that has been slated for some years on that. Jacob's contract addendum, this is just for the equipment portion. We've done this because the wastewater equipment is a lot of money. So for us to do it on our own, it would be pretty crazy, and this is a much more effective and efficient way to deal with this. And then the water department getting a replacement pickup. So for next year, the outlay across all departments is 2.8 million. The 5-year plan is about 5.2. As you can see, the heaviest expenses next year, a lot of that's being driven in the fire department with what's going on there, and then the availability of ARPA funds. Any questions?
Councilmember Bobbitt,
Thanks again, Mike. No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, one quick question. Mike, has there been discussions with a shared fire truck between the City of College Place and some other entity? I know some of the probably outdated conversations over the last year or two, those have come and gone, but was there any thoughts on that as far as ladder access to some of the taller buildings and things like that?
I mean, we do have interlocal agreements with the district and with City of Walla Walla, where I mean they do help out. But I mean, again, you have to look at it. We're with the fire departments. Your fire insurance rating is based on the availability of fire vehicles within a certain circumference of the station. So the other agencies nearby, they have enough of a need themselves, where, I mean, we do share each other's vehicles from the concept of responding to events, but to completely like be able to go in halves and stuff, especially with the dispersion of the various stations, doesn't really work out too good. Now, at least with what we're doing, it is with the ARPA money, and we're opting for just a regular apparatus. We did put a request into the university if they'd be willing to assist if we sprung for a ladder truck, but we didn't get a response back on that after several attempts. So I mean, we're opting for replacing what we have, so that way we maintain our fire rating, which keeps everyone's premiums in check.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Ms. Selby.
I don't really have any questions. I just have a comment on the coordinating with the university. Unfortunately, our fiscal years are separate enough that it makes it really difficult. Typically, we'll start putting ideas for budget together in January, and it'll get adopted in May for a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. So early January might be a time to try that again when people are working on their budgets.
Okay.
Ms. Sherman
No questions. Thank you.
and Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right, let's move on then. We're going to talk about the fiscal year 2022-2027 Information Technology Plan.
Hey, thank you. So, I mean, a lot of this here is really software maintenance agreements across departments, because throughout COVID, we end up having to try to automate and do things differently across several departments. What I will say, some of the heavier lifts will be as far as like it within the finance paradigm, the ERP system implementation, and what that's being driven by. And I believe I've mentioned this prior, but our longtime financial system bias got bought out by Springbrook. And they have made several insinuations that they're essentially going to stop supporting the server-based iteration we use, which would force us to go to cloud-based, which in and of itself isn't bad, but it would be a dramatic price hike for the same thing and really no improvement. So Brian and their cross-departmental team is looking into a software solution that can essentially do several things. So replace bias, potentially replace even Questica, so it would be like all within one encompassing thing, and maybe even move community development into that. So they are doing a fact-finding mission, figuring out and demos to figure out what would be best. But yeah, with that situation with bias, that was basically forced upon us, and several communities are in the same predicament because they had a very loyal customer base for decades, and now they sold out to a national conglomerate. Other changes is that before that just essentially does simulated phishing, which is good. So that way we can get our staff skilled up on what emails you open, what ones you need to be cautious about. I mean, reading the news and AWC, several cities have had their systems taken over and they'd have a payout in Bitcoin. So knock on wood, so far we're doing good, but we definitely don't want to jinx ourselves. And then a lot of this with the computers and everything else, we've been doing good enough past several years catching up, where now we're at a naturalized state of replacing them as needed. So it's no longer a sky is falling type situation. And then community development, just continuing with the Survey Monkey and doing all that. Fire department, they're in a similar predicament with Firehouse. That got bought out too, so there is going to be a changeover in that software that we're going to have to deal with. Police department, there is going to be continuation of the body camera contract, net motion, which is needed for accreditation. And then every other year, we try to get a new security camera with our forfeited proceeds fund. So the goal next year is to get one at Lamperty and Meadowbrook, because with thefts and other issues down there, that would definitely be very worthwhile to have that. And then Public Works, backflow testing software, GIS maintenance, asset management maintenance, and then for stormwater engineering tech, so we could maintain our standards for road cross sections and storm standards, having that civil 3D license. So the yearly cost for across the whole organization is about $346,000. That's the highest jump of the 6 years, mainly because of that ERP project I elaborated on. But then as you'll see in subsequent years, it dives into 200. So the 6-year outlay on that's about 1.6 million. But that is the 6-year IT plan. Any questions?
Mr. Bobbitt
No questions. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Mike, a real quick question. Does our insurance company or are you guys internally performing ongoing education as far as employees, alerting them to the dangers of opening emails, the whole phishing, the whole access they can get into our system many times by accident? Are we communicating that to our staff, or is the insurance company doing anything with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
We are, our insurance company does have cybersecurity training, which we've been offering to our staff. I will say I would like to do simulated like phishing exercises, which most cities are doing nowadays, and we are not, and there is a software that does that, and that is in this proposal. Because I will say that what the insurance offers as far as the whole host of cybersecurity and being smart with email is actually really good. The only part that's a little weak on is doing simulations as far as what phishing could look like, because discussing it versus seeing it's a whole nother thing. And the problem is that's one of those split-second responses where if you haven't had your morning coffee and you happen to click on it, you could basically bring down the whole system. I mean, it's happened at Ellensburg, so.
Yeah. Okay, just wanted to check. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Ms. Selby?
I feel like I've asked you this before, but I don't remember the answer, so I'm sorry. Do we have insurance that covers ransomware? Because I know when the university got hacked, our insurance company came in right away and we did not actually pay any money, which I appreciated. I really don't like the idea of paying money to people for this. So I have no idea what the rates are or anything, but it seems like it'd be a really good idea to have ransomware insurance, because they actually did the investigation and they found out who it is. But unfortunately, they're in a country that really doesn't care. So there wasn't much of a way to go after them legally.
We do have cybersecurity coverage. I will have to get the exact number, but what I will say is over the last like 2 years we've had it. Not here within our organization, but within the pool, there have been enough of these cybersecurity hacks where like the out-of-pocket deductible shot up quite a bit. So while we do have the cybersecurity insurance, we still would have some out-of-pocket exposure, which I'm trying to head off at the crossing. So hopefully we don't have to deal with that, knock on wood.
Yeah, it's you kind of have to come at it from both sides, trying to prevent it on the one hand and being ready to respond on the other. We fortunately didn't lose that much because of the regular backups that they do and because of the amount of stuff that they've moved onto the web. But it was really helpful. And I don't know, frankly, I think when it happened, having the insurance people send in experts to walk our IT people through what to do was actually probably more helpful than the actual money side. So that's the part that I hope that we can have insurance that does that.
Yeah, ours does.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Sherman?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mike. All right, we're going to give Mike a little rest and move on to the ambulance utility by Chief Winter.
Back in 2019, for those of you who were on the council then, can remember we gave a presentation on establishing our ambulance service. And I want to be very careful how I talk tonight about the ambulance utility, because at the time, the UB quoted me on the front page that I was so excited that it was finally happening, that I would do an Adventist interpretive dance. So I'm not promising that here. You know, we do have one more meeting on the topic, so just hold your horses. You might get to see that Adventist interpretive dance at the next meeting. Oh, no, you just saw it again. Sorry. You're
You've
not
been
Adventist.
practicing, I can tell.
Well, you know, Adventists don't dance, so it's pretty easy to get that accomplished. This is the fourth time that we've talked about this ambulance utility and establishing the ambulance utility. We have had great success in doing ambulance service here in our community. We do that with very dedicated volunteers, very dedicated residents who live at the fire station, and one career member on every day, 24/7. Our ambulance service is extremely busy. We are projecting to hit 1,800 calls this year. We are the second busiest fire department in our county. We are the fourth when it comes to staffing, and we are fourth when it comes to funding. So I think we do a great job with the resources we have, and we will continue to do a great business and a great service for the community that we care about. Last week, we talked a lot about the funding and all that, and I'll let Brian talk about that. I'm looking at the sheet. I don't know if you want to pull this up, called the Ambulance Utility Information. No, keep going. There we go. So if you look at how the ambulance fund is currently funded there, we receive 50 cents per thousand. That is a voted for EMS levy that every 6 years, county-wide, we'd vote for. And that is assessed to our population by a third valuation, third population, and a third run volume. Because we are so busy, we have a lot of elderly folks. We receive more money through that levy than is actually collected within our community. So it's a great levy for us. We really like it. You know, anytime you get something a little bit extra, we like that. Another way we are funded is through what we call the GEMT, the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. And that is for every Medicaid patient that we transport. The federal government cuts a check to the state based upon how much it actually costs us. And once a year, we get a lump sum that pays 1/2 of the difference from what it costs us to do the transport to what they actually paid. So as an example, it may cost us $1,400 when we haul a Medicaid patient to the hospital, and they pay $100. So they're going to give us half the difference between the 100 and the 1,400 in a lump sum check once a year. It seems a little bit of money laundering, but it's the federal government, so we can't ask too many questions. It might stop. We also charge for our service. Our service currently is $695 every time we transport somebody who is a community resident. It's $895 if they don't live in Walla Walla County. We give that $200 discount based upon that's about how much we receive in the EMS levy. And so that's what makes up that difference. And from that $695, we actually receive, after insurance pays and all that, about half. About $350 is our actual collectibles. And that's what we base our income on annually, so that we're not looking like we're losing a whole lot of money. That's just kind of, if you've ever worked in medical and environment, that's just kind of how medical service works. And then finally, we receive funds from the general fund. We talked a lot about last week that we're at a crisis point where we need some help from you for funding authorization to get some more staffing so that we don't burn out our volunteers. We're going out 5 times a day at all hours of the day on average. And that's a lot for When you consider each run is about an hour to an hour and a half, with COVID, it's even longer. That's a huge drain at 2 a.m. when you're asleep at home, or even here asleep at the station and a volunteer, and you have to get up and work the next day. So we're looking for the ambulance utility to fund one more position per 24-hour period, with one more person to help with covering overtime so that we can reduce our overtime costs. That person will work during the day, and then when there's a planned vacation or sick leave, that person will be available to cover that person on shift who's not going to be there. So we want to continue our service. We want to continue supporting our volunteers. That's why we're looking at this ambulance utility rate. We feel as a citizen in our community, you deserve certain types of services, maybe not Cadillac services, but services that need to be provided. Good streets, good law enforcement, making you feel safe in your home. Someone's going to respond if your house is on fire. And if you need medical help, someone should show up and provide that help and get you to the appropriate level of help. That is why we are looking for this implementation of the ambulance utility rate. The city of Walla Walla has put one through their council already that's going to start in 2023, and it's $12, and I don't remember the cents on it. When Brian talks here in just a moment, he probably can, numbers are his life, so he can probably just, spout those right out. You'll see there that I don't have anything in the cost per billing unit, because that is Brian's magic to come up with. And I will turn it over to Brian, and then we will answer questions at the end.
All right. If you can bring up the financial info, please. Maybe zoom in a bit and go to the first page. So back in 2018, FSC, they did an analysis of the costs, and David and I figured it was old enough that we would do our own calculations to verify their information and to come up with how we currently are running. So what we did is, so just to step back a little bit, so everybody should know that our fire and ambulance operate under our current expense fund, and that funds the operation of that utility. We do have some revenue that we get, like David spoke about, but all in all, any deficit is funded by current expense. So what we did is we took the revenues and the expenditures. You can see in the top of that sheet the periods we looked at. We looked at 17 actual, 18 actual, 19 actual, 2021 actual, and 2021 budget. And so what we had to do is we had to split apart the EMS from the fire. And all the employees are currently paid by the fire division. So what we had to do is we had to allocate the costs amongst the fire and EMS. And this is the exercise we did in these spreadsheets, identifying all the revenues, all the costs, and then allocating. Our allocation was based on, if you could just arrow down a bit on that sheet, please. Thank you. We did it on a, I'm just blanking on the incidents, the number of incidents that occurred between fire and EMS. And we allocated those related costs to each one of the fire and the EMS. This last page kind of summarizes where we are at on the EMS. We don't have to go through every page because it's just basically the bars line item detail of the costs. So yeah, there's a lot of information there. So we ended up allocating. So if you go back to that top sheet where we were, it's basically the summary. This provides everything. So you can see that over those given years, if we take our revenues and then there's not a lot of direct costs that go to EMS. So we had to allocate those shared costs, and there's an allocation there. You can see shared cost allocations. The arrow's going across that line right now. So, and then we have a total net cost. So you can see over the years, it kind of fluctuates, but we're sort of, operating at a surplus within the EMS due to all the direct costs. So then we allocate, you can see we're still almost at a break even. Now the issue becomes is when we add in those salary and benefits and the costs for those additional for staff. So our calculation based on 2021 budget numbers is that it's going to cost approximately $458,000. So I would say between $450,000 and $500,000 to add those additional 4 employees, have benefits for them, have their miscellaneous, their clothing allowance, etc. So in effect, the EMS, if it got allocated directly and you included those new employees, we'd be operating at a $436,000 deficit every year for the EMS fund. And based on where we're at with our balances and current expense, that we cannot absorb that without some sort of additional revenue flow. I mean, we could probably do it for a year or two, but long term, we would gobble up any of our reserves in our current expense and probably fall outside of our requirements for reserve balances. So as we sit now, we cannot afford to add those additional staff. That's where we talked about bringing in this ambulance utility. Now, based on our calculation, what we did is we used the units based from the 2018 study to come up. We took our deficit amount and we came up with a rate per year per those number of units and then divided it by 12 to come up with the monthly rate. And that was our calculation at $852 per unit per month. Now, the big question is how do we calculate the units? And that's something that I think we have to have dialogue with council about how we go about calculating the units. So in effect, when you look at the units, and this was on the information provided last week, and I don't know if we have it, but we can see that we had single. Do you know if that, David, if that got included in this?
It's buried in that FCS study. I don't have a summary sheet on there.
All right.
But Lisa does. Nope.
Nothing there.
No, because you shared that information from your screen last time. Sorry, I thought I had it, but I don't.
Well, I can just talk about it. We had single family at 3,168 units. We had multifamily at 641. We had nursing homes at 117, commercial at 114, and public streets and schools at 233. And that totaled the 4,273. Now, in discussions I've had with David is the question, well, how do we get a unit in a nursing home? So David contacted all the nursing homes, and one of the things that we can't charge is on Medicare patients. But if you look at the each of the homes, for example, Eagle Springs has 27 rooms, which they house 51 people, and approximately half of those are on Medicaid. So we're looking at 23 to 26 chargeable rooms there. The Regency, there's 106 beds, 32. Currently, they have 64 patients with 37 in Medicaid. And that's approximately 32. Brookdale has 82 rooms. I don't think we got the additional information from them, but if we assume a 50% Medicaid, that's another 41 chargeable. And Waypoint is all Medicaid, so that's not chargeable to those facilities. So being that Regency is like down about 40% in their occupancy, I came up with a number of 99 units, whereas the FCS group came up with 117. So our question sort of is, what do we do with the number? How do we charge units? Is a nursing home 1 unit? Is a single family 1 unit? Is a multifamily home 1 unit? That's sort of our dilemma at this point, and we were hoping to have some dialogue with council on how they felt it. We should identify a unit, and then each unit would get charged that $8.52 per unit. Is there any questions about the financial analysis or how we identify units as far as this charge goes?
Raise your hand if you have any questions regarding the financials. Councilmember Peterson?
So how's Walla Walla defining units? Do we know, or are they not that far along?
It is my understanding that they are charging their $12 pretty much per address.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. You know, I think about this. And we can have a discussion all day and all night about how many calls go to a nursing home versus, you know, my house type of a thing. But so what was the thoughts on Walla Walla University dorm rooms and things like that? Was there any conversations regarding that?
We did talk about it. I don't know if we came up with a definitive answer. The part I'm struggling with is my brain says that if I use one method to determine what a unit is, that one method should be used for all things and not use 12 different charts to come up with 6 different types of unit counts.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem fair to me. Yeah, I don't care how we determine what the units are, but it needs.
You know, as a first pass street address is interesting because you're going to have, but then you get into how many people are living in a single. I mean, you get in all kinds of math craziness. You know, I'm guessing.
Did it per address, the per unit cost would go up because there would be less units. An apartment complex is $8. A house.
Well, yeah,
is $8.
we're talking about nursing homes there, aren't we? Or well, no, you're talking about multifamily also would drive that up.
Multifamily as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think there needs to be some discussions about, the university. I don't think we want to do 875 times 1100, you know, or something like that, or yeah.
Any other questions on the financials? Chief Winter, do you have more to discuss on your proposal or your question? Okay, so any questions at all on this discussion on this item?
This is Councilmember Selby. I remember going through this before, and I'm wondering if we can fall back on the way we did it then, or am I missing something?
Well, basically the way it was presented in that financial is the way it was done back then.
Okay.
They identified the nursing homes and the schools, including the university. They identified as a number of units, and they would be charged per unit based on the calculation that was in that model. So the nursing homes, there was 117 units to be charged. And the public schools, there was 233 units to be charged.
Well, but that's the public ownership and streets and schools, right? I mean, because we don't have 233 schools. It's, but it includes places like City Hall and the city shop and places like that, right?
Correct. It would include dormitories. It would include.
Yes, that is correct.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm confused here. You're saying that, well, that the university is included in the 233?
That is my understanding.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Councilmember Bobbitt?
Yes, I just wondered if we've looked at some similar sized cities with a school, university, rest homes, whatever, that has a successful EMS program in place. Just done some comparisons around the country and see if there's some other ideas that maybe we haven't looked at or seen.
Don't think anyone has our situation.
We are unique.
Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Peterson?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Here goes. I think we were a little bit of a, if I understand this correctly, we're in a little bit of a foot race, correct? Here. We need to make a decision on this with potentially first of the year implementation if it's okay. Is that the thinking?
That was our thought. We would also, if it was approved at the next meeting, then it would go into, we'd have to incorporate it into the budget process.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the issue of here is that Chief Winger has approached the mayor and myself about the fact that due to the extreme call volumes and that we're a primarily volunteer agency, we're getting near the precipice of the whole burnout thing. And if we reach that apex, then our ability to, I mean, we've had many a time where we've had dual and calls at the same time, and our ability to make it could be a challenge in a timely manner if we don't figure out this whole staffing issue, which unfortunately ties the money.
Right. I at the workshop, I think I said me, myself, and I supported this. And then we did speak also to the fact that if this is added to the utility bill, that we need to make sure we have really direct communication with the citizens, showing that, some of us have gotten comments this summer about with the hot summer and all that and whatnot. We've gotten comments about the size of the water bill at its extremes when it was, really hot out. But I think it's going to be really imperative that we communicate as a comparison what we're charging as compared to other local towns and cities, because that many times when that's pointed out, it diffuses some of the concerns that individuals can have. So this is something that's more or less, it's borderline. It sounds like an emergency. We really can't be, this is something we need to kind of move on. I think, my personal opinion, something we need to move on rather quickly. So.
Agree. Councilmember Bobbitt?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Okay. So the major hurdle right now is how do we fund 8 additional employees? Am I correct in understanding that?
4.
Well, I thought in that plan you showed 8 salaries for 8 additional. And then it seemed like at the workshop, Chief Winter said you could live with 4.
It's 4.
Yeah, it's been 4.
Been 4, and in this analysis, it's 4.
Let me go look at that real quick.
I mean, we currently have 4. Is it 4 full-time staff, Chief?
There are 6 of us over here, including myself
6.
and the fire marshal.
Oh, now I'm not finding it. I thought I saw it here.
If you did find it, it is a typo.
Okay. There we go. Okay, thanks for clarifying that for me.
You know, aside from being short-staffed, staff fatigue is also a danger, both for the staff and for the citizens. So
Oh, and we're now responding to law enforcement calls for them as well.
Yes.
So
Yes, I would say since that law enforcement bill passed the state legislature, whether it was the intended or unintended consequence of it, a lot of the calls I would say traditionally would have been done on a police type level are now falling to EMS, and that's inflating call volumes as well.
you know, a concern, so in the mental health industry, we are facing a severe shortage of clinicians, and even our classes or people, the schools that do it, they're even seeing a reduction in students applying for that type of career because of the fatigue that's come out of overworking them. And it's just, you know, it goes too far. So this is really an important reason why we're trying to do this quickly as well, because we do not want to wait until the problem gets worse before we take care of our staff and our citizens.
Yeah, and I would say we're definitely we're aware of them. Unfortunately, the utility systems and everything else hitting or around the same time and so forth. As you saw by the presentation, though, we've taken every mechanism possible to try to thwart this thing early on through the GEMT revenues. You could even argue working the wildland fires to try to prop up the department. But unfortunately, since the shifting in the call volumes, plus since we are home to comprehensive health, the nursing facilities, the university, just a lot of focal points that attract a lot of activities, our call volumes to begin with are fairly inflated for a city of our size. And then you have all of that other stuff on top of it, and it causes an issue.
All right, is there any other questions or comments? Because we want to make sure that we have everything covered of this topic, so that when it comes to council, everybody is ready.
Yeah, and what I can do for the next council meeting is I can provide some different scenarios on the unit calculations. I'm confident in that the dollars are accurate that we have to fund. The question is how do we charge citizens, and how much is each one charged? That, in my books, is kind of the hurdle point, is that how do we identify who gets charged? So I can come up with some different scenarios of how the charging could work, and maybe that will help with the solution.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, really kind of open question. Do we have screening for charity care? Is there just briefly, how does that work?
A person can file. We have a form that they fill out, and BMAC is the one that looks at those forms and determines whether or not it qualifies as a charity case.
And my question was not related to the utility fee, obviously. It was related to the ambulance $695 charge. Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, so let's, and to the staff, let's also kind of think of what angles we can go about informing citizens should this pass. Per Councilmember Peterson's thoughts, educating and informing early on and giving people a chance to call and ask for questions, or get us addressed. So let's start thinking about ways to do it: videos, newsletters, social media, etc. All right, anything else? All right, thank you, Chief Winter, and thank you, Brian. Appreciate your help.
You're welcome.
And your time and your work on that. Okay, Mr. Rizzatello, you're back up regarding road safety plan.
Thank you. So this was presented at a workshop a couple of weeks ago and it was in early draft form. We are now at the final draft form of this. This is a newer type concept for communities of our size. Luckily, through the help of our intern Aquia, and then the Wall Valley Blue Zones, and then the Wall Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization, they've taken on this project to complete it for us. Because if we were to do this of our own accord, like for instance, City of Walla Walla did one of these, and they had a consulting contract that went north of 30,000 on this, and we basically pay the intern, and then Blue Zones and the MPO did this pro bono, their assistance. So for communities our size, the state passed a requirement where if you get grant funds from the State Department of Transportation, you must have one of these adopted. Otherwise, they will actually disqualify you and you can no longer get grant funds. So therefore, it was imperative that we get this thing adopted. And as you'll go through the pages and so forth, I mean, page 5 has an introduction. Page 6 goes into the state framework. Page 8 ends up going into, I would say, the data about crashes. Going on to page 9, I find that of interest because I just like heat maps, and that shows you where a lot of our severity of incidents are at. I mean, a lot of them are no-brainers. It's 125 in Meadowbrook, 125 College. Then the Larch intersections, we're always talking about Larch and Whitman and Larch and 12th. I would say some surprising ones is 12th and College. And then also some of the stuff on 4th. So 4th and College and 4th and Davis. So interesting stuff there. Page 11 gets into where the fatality and serious injury crashes are. And you could see a map of all of that. Page 12 gets into the heat map of total crashes. You can see what the brightest one is, which is 125 in Meadowbrook. And then a lot of this gets just into the hardcore data of essentially what to amend. The nuts and bolts of this, I would say, is actually page 64 onward. Because page 64 onward, they develop basically a weighted list based on crash volumes and traffic counts and other things as far as what should be a priority and what is the best improvement to deal with it. And you'll see basically a spreadsheet from the page 64 onward that deals with those key intersections. And this will allow us to essentially petition WASDOT for funding, and it also puts us in a better position. Because like for instance, next year, State Route 125, the state is supposed to repave all of 125 from the 9th and Dales Military roundabout all the way to the state line. And I think this puts us in a position to be demanding additional funding to do some safety treatments of some of those key intersections. And then it opens up more buckets of money for other intersections around town. So with that, this is what's before you. This is the admin report. So this will go for action the next meeting, but we're just trying to get this adopted because as we get into early next year, WASDOT will once again open up their biennium round of funding, and there'll be opportunities to get additional agencies to pay for our needed infrastructure. So that's what's before you.
All right, let's go for questions or comments, and we'll begin with Councilmember Bobbitt.
Thanks again, Mike. No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson.
Yep. Yeah, Mike, is this a tool to approach the state on lowering the speed limit on 125? Do you believe?
Yeah, I believe this crash day, the heat maps demonstrate it fairly well. There's an issue. As you all know, they've been trying to negate changing the speed limit on that, but the data doesn't lie here. There definitely is an issue, and then putting the rumble strips and the warning flash signs and stuff. Evidently, since a lot of this is newer data from the time that they attempted to fix it, it still hasn't been fixed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Selby,
No questions. Thank you.
yep.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thank
Ms. Boyle.
No questions. Looks great, Mike.
Thanks.
I don't have a question. My comment is, I am surprised how many accidents are on 4th and Ash, considering that it's a neighborhood street. But I guess that's about the point where people are trying to hurry up and get to college. Right? Right? All right.
Hey,
so-
Norma, I have a comment about 4th and Ash. I've had troubles there in the winter when it's icy.
Oh, have you?
So it's
Is it-
you that's causing this variation on this?
I didn't have an accident, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
it was quite a troublesome intersection. And, you know, if someone's going too fast one way and it's icy.
Yeah.
It's also, I think it's people leaving both Davis and the women's dorm at the university. And then there's no real control on that intersection.
Right.
So, and then it's hard to see, so you just step on the gas and hope. You might want to look at that.
I think we need to do something about that one as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I would agree.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to last item on here is the discussion of changing the date or canceling November's workshop. So right now it is scheduled for November 2nd, which is election day. And as I'm sure you all know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us on the ballot, and one, and then Ms. Councilmember Nyhagen's replacement. So it's quite an active ballot for us. And so the question came up, if should we cancel that meeting in consideration of focusing on what's going on with the election and not being able to really concentrate straight. Should we reschedule, or should we cancel, or should we just go on with it? What's the thoughts on that?
This is
Councilmember Selby?
Councilmember Selby, and I would suggest that we cancel that meeting. When we have had meetings at the same time as elections, they haven't gone well because it is extremely hard for anyone to concentrate.
All right, thank you. Any other?
I would just, if
Go ahead.
it's okay with Mike and Brian, is there anything that's needed that week for budget planning?
No.
Yeah.
Not for budget.
Okay.
Okay.
No, and we're ahead of the game on the 6-year plan, so.
All right.
Yeah, great question. So Mike, you're okay with that?
Yeah, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, and I just checked the budget schedule and we're good. It's not until the next meeting after that.
Okay.
I'm in favor of canceling then as well.
So Lisa, do we need to put that on the agenda for the next meeting, or can we just cancel that?
Honestly, if somebody wants to make a motion right now to cancel it, then we can do that.
I'll make a motion to cancel the November workshop.
This is Councilmember Selby, I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any other discussion?
That would be the November 2021 workshop, not all of them.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion's passed. Thank you all. Appreciate that. Let's see, there's no informational reports in the packet. We do not have an executive session tonight. And I just want to remind everyone that the city is having the trunk or treat on October 29th from 3 to 6 p.m. over at the municipal building lot. So if you know of any, oh yes, perfect. Anybody that wants to participate, an organization, a business that wants to participate, or let families know that this is happening at Municipal Hall, at the compound, that it would be great to have as many kids come. Everybody's going to decorate their cars. If you want to show up in costume, show up in costume. Let's make it fun for these kids. It's been a rough year.
And there is a form on our website on the events page for people who want to put their trunk out there and hand out things to sign up to participate.
Yeah, it'd be really fun, and it doesn't have to be candy. It'd be great to get, I don't know, dentist or, exercise a little jump rope or something, whatever it is. It'd be fun just to have as many cars out there and people in costumes. So kind of think about your network.
Do we know if Blue Zones is going to be there?
I've sent an email to them requesting it, and actually,
I see Emily.
Emily's on.
Yeah, Emily.
Hey, this is Emily. I think we're planning on being there. Yeah,
that'd be great.
We're excited.
Thank you.
Great. We should also check with the Walla Walla Road Safety, Traffic Safety Department. They might want to come out and do something with kids.
And the library sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Look at us go. All right. All right. Any other business for good of the order?
I will also say by that time, Pocket INET should have the free 5G hotspot working out there by that time, per what Todd was telling me. So we'll be able to test that out at that juncture.
Oh, that'll be neat. Yeah, Councilmember Bobbitt.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd still like to see our invocation moved back into the regular agenda. It got skipped again tonight.
Okay.
And I would like to see it put after the Pledge of Allegiance like it used to be.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Rizzatello, can you make sure that Mr. McAndrews follows up with Councilmember Bobbitt regarding the water pressure over in the Independence?
I already sent an email and CC'd Councilmember Bobbitt on it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Selby?
Just to follow up on Councilmember Bobbitt's request, I think it might be good for us to talk about this at a workshop, because I'm concerned about the legality of having Christians only do the invocation. So I think if we're going to have the invocation as part of the public meeting, we should expand it beyond Christians. But so I think we should discuss it a little bit.
And if the council wants, I'd be happy to provide kind of an outline of what the do's and don'ts.
That'd be great.
Yep. We did have citizen complaints regarding it, which is why we moved it back to a more private time between the council prior to the meetings.
I've also done some research online, and there is a Supreme Court ruling regarding prayers before city council meetings that says it's not unconstitutional and it is allowed.
Sure, right. No, and it is. It's just,
yeah,
in consideration of, but yes, absolutely. So we'll talk more about that and see where it goes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
This Councilmember Selby, so move.
Second, Councilmember Jerry.
All right. So if there's no objection, we will adjourn at 8:29 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.